my friends. I am so excited to be in this interview with Bruce Cryer from New York calling in. I am so excited to have met you, Bruce. We have been together at a festival called the Global Luminary Activation Experience in Cannes, in France, in September. So it's been a couple of months, but I feel like I've known you much longer. I
Hmm.
have had the pleasure of being part of your workshops and just having different talks with you, and I'm just so thrilled with what you bring. So I had to make an interview with you. So Bruce, you are the former CEO of the Heart Math Institute, and you are now the founder of the Renaissance Human. So please let us hear a little bit more about you, and welcome to this interview.
Well, thank you, Gita. It has been great to get to know you, and in the event in France was lovely, and now the interactions that we've had, especially around the online course. And
Yes,
thank you for encouraging me to do that. I'm planning to do a bunch more now
good,
next year.
good.
So it's fun to be here and to talk to you and your people,
Yeah,
young parents. And I was once that.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
been a while since I've been a young parent.
yeah.
But I can definitely relate. In the early years of Heart Math, which goes back to the early 90s, early 1990s, when we were kind of starting it out, we had a big vision, which was to provide a simple set of techniques that parents, children, teachers, generals, nurses, people with health issues, just about anybody, athletes, would be able to find value out of and make practical in their life. Not only to deal with stress, although that was a big reason, but also just improve their well-being and improve how they perform with anything like tests for kids or performance on the job for adults or performance as a parent. And so, I think what part of what's been fun about Heart Math is that it's a very neat combination of simple tools. I mean, there are tools, as I think I've mentioned to you before, for pre-kindergarten age kids. That's You have to language it quite differently than you would for a CEO of a company or a doctor or somebody else. So it can be talked about in language that a child can relate to beautifully because it's all about the heart.
Mhm.
And then Heart Math also is, as you know, is very robust in terms of its scientific research. So the techniques, which can seem fairly simple, are backed by very strong scientific evidence dating back to the early 90s. Hundreds of studies that have now come out around the world around the effectiveness of these techniques for the people that use them. And then there's this cool biofeedback technology, as you know, which is also an attractive part of it because your smartphone gets to actually be smart and show you important information about your system, and so that you can improve, so you can have less stress, perform more in the zone, and just feel better in general. So Heart Math's a lot of cool things that I think can relate to just about anybody listening to this for sure.
Yes. And what I found is I've been talking about having a strong heart connection for the past 5 years with the books I have written, teaching parents to help their children connect to their hearts. And when I met you this summer, and also the Danish representative of the Heart Math Institute, Bjørn Nord, and I had these interesting conversations with you, I felt like you were the missing piece of my puzzle, that now I can finally, with science, explain what I've been trying to teach. And for some, the more intuitive, spiritual way of teaching can be a little challenging. So here we have some science, and that is so exciting for me. That we have some science showing what actually happens when we connect to our hearts. So could you tell us a little bit about what the science shows when we connect to our hearts?
Yes, it was really fascinating in the early years because we, like you said, you intuitively believe things about the heart, and you've been teaching that way for 5 years. Well, so did we, but there was not a lot of scientific evidence because the kind of Western science. This is not true for Chinese medicine or Ayurveda or those kinds of traditions, but in the Western science, the heart was just viewed as a pump that had an electrical system to it. So it was important in the body physically, but not related to emotion or any of that kind of thing. And yet, people all over the world associate their own heart with courage, with intuition, with wisdom. I mean, this is what we were often raised to believe, or the traditions had us believe. And so we wanted to understand, because we believed there was an absolute direct connection. I mean, it's no secret that people that are angry all the time, for example, are at higher risk of heart attacks and heart disease. People that are under stress a lot of the time, likewise have higher blood pressure, have more of a risk for various kinds of heart disease. So we kind of knew that was true, believed it was true anyway. It seemed to be obvious, and yet understanding the mechanisms wasn't really understood yet. So that was part of our journey, was to discover what exactly is the link. And I think one of the things that we were most known for, are still most known for, is an understanding that the heart is always changing speed. Number one, it's not even, it's not steady. If you're meditating, it might be pretty steady, but even then, it's going to vary in speed. It's going to increase for a few beats and decrease for a few beats, and increase for a while and decrease for a while, even when we're asleep or meditating or very calm. But how it changes, if whether the patterns are chaotic and sort of disordered, or whether they are nice and smooth and coherent, as the scientists say, that depends on our emotion. So we were the first ones in about 1992 or 93 to uncover the idea that whenever we're experiencing any emotion that we would consider stressful, like impatience or anger or frustration or anxiety or depression, any of those, cause the pattern of, of how the heart beats to be all over the place, kind of jumpy and disordered. And I mean, most people can relate to the idea when they're panicked, like if somebody cuts them off in traffic and all of a sudden, you have to slam on the brakes and you feel your heart kind of racing, but also kind of all over the place. Well, that would be obvious that, yeah, my heart's chaotic then, for sure. I felt that. You wouldn't necessarily think that when it's just anxiety or boredom or depression, but in fact, any of those quote stressful emotions create this very jagged, erratic pattern. But what we also discovered was, if someone would just take 2 minutes to focus on things that they're grateful for in their life, take 30 seconds. It actually doesn't take 2 minutes. Take 15 seconds. Like right now, when we got on the call a few minutes ago, and I said, "Oh, it's gotten sunny outside." I felt a little, hey, yay! I woke up to snow and gray and cold. And I thought, well, at least sunshine, yay! And so that moment of appreciation, what we now know from the research, is causes the heart to go into the smooth rhythm. Like life is good. I can speed up for a while and then slow down for a while and speed up for a while. The heart is supposed to change speed all the time. It's not supposed to be steady. But ideally, it changes in a regular pattern, a nice even rhythm, because then your heart's healthier. It's not in a fight with itself. It needs to change speed because we never know the next second what life may require. You may suddenly have to race out of the building because you smell smoke. You may have to save a child from falling off their bike. Who knows? So the heart has to be able to quickly accelerate to as needed, which is why it's always changing, because you never know what may come next. But you want it to be changing in a smooth rhythm if possible.
Mm.
And
Uh,
so it turns out, whenever we're appreciating something, whenever we're loving what we're doing, whenever we're feeling compassion, feeling joy, any of the positive emotions produce this lovely, smooth pattern in the heart.
mhm.
Cardiologist looks at that and says, that's a really healthy heart.
Mm.
Our brain says, thank you. You're giving me really good energy right now from the heart. So the brain works better. You can
Yeah.
think more clearly. You get bright ideas, creative ideas, remember things, all kinds of things.
And that's what we know from meditation, right? We know that is exactly how I feel after a good meditation. And now we
Yeah.
can even, because I'm training with you right now, so I'm plugged into the app with the sensor every day, and I see that even when I feel I'm having a very good meditation, the science shows sometimes that it isn't as deep as I thought it was. And just the same, the other day I was frustrated with some of my work, and I could see that it wasn't going well with the meditation. I thought, okay, I got to do something else. So I had the sensor on and I had the app, and I went to my piano and I started playing some of my favorite songs, and everything was just in green. And we will show some graphs later to
Mm.
talk about what it means to be in green. But basically, I was much more coherent while playing the piano than I was in my meditation. And had I not had the app, I wouldn't have known in the same
Mm.
way.
Mhm.
So
That's a great.
meditation is one thing, deep meditation is different. Really connecting to the heart in the meditation is a whole different ball game, as I see it.
That's a fantastic example, and I think part of the way I look at this, and I started using a phrase, "Doing what makes your heart sing," as an example of this, because that's exactly what you did. Meditation in that moment wasn't making your heart sing. It
No.
probably felt like work or
Yeah.
a discipline or something. But playing a favorite song,
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
that song. I feel great again. So that's like an insider tip from
Mm.
HeartMath is find anything to appreciate. Find an old photo of yourself as a 6-year-old. You know, I don't know, whatever it might be. That remember your favorite dog, your favorite cat, anything at all that can give you a kind of light, buoyant heart.
Mm.
That feeling that you get thinking about that animal, that song, whatever, is exactly what the heart needs to kind of
Mm.
get back in the healthy rhythm, and you feel better. And I think the thing about the brain benefiting from this is also a very big insight that HeartMath came up with, because there's all kinds of evidence now that we think more clearly. The
Mm.
brain, the cortex, which is roughly 80% of the brain, gets really good energy from the heart when the heart is sending that smooth signal. And it's getting input from the heart all the time. The heart's constantly feeding the brain. So when the rhythm is smooth, it's like the brain is like, wow, great, surfs up. I can ride this. This is so much easier than riding that wave when you're all chaotic.
Mm. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I know you're a singer too, because you're actually one of my daughter's favorite singers at the moment. Ever since you performed for us in Cannes, she has been singing your song. So I know, and I've seen you dance. Even I know you know the feeling of the creativity of singing and dancing and how that makes our hearts sing. So I just wanted to mention that you're also a singer, and we can even find you on Spotify.
Bless the children, keep them strong, give them all the love they need today. Teach the children, hug them long, teach them to be strong and kind and free. Show them how to love the ones that need their love and let them carry on and
Yeah.
on. Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Yes, you can. You certainly can.
your songs are making my daughter very happy, and I think her heart is singing when she is singing with you. So I just that is just beautiful.
Well, and thank you so much. You know, it was such a treat to meet her in France and to see her joy and that it's continuing. And
Yeah,
yes, I did notice in my little breakdown of Spotify some a fan in Denmark. So,
that's her
yeah, exactly.
or us.
Right, yeah, exactly. The family.
Mm.
But it's true that and it doesn't matter about having a good voice when you sing, but for many people, singing a favorite song, especially if they can be themselves completely, like singing in a shower in your car where nobody's listening, it's only you. It doesn't matter how it sounds. It's the feeling that you get by
Yeah,
connecting to that song. That's why you want to do it. It's like, oh, I just want to feel that song.
yeah,
I want to kind of feel it inside me.
yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that will do it too. That'll get that heart into that better rhythm. We
Mm,
call it a more coherent rhythm,
mm.
which helps the whole body and helps the brain. And of course, it helps others too,
Yeah,
because when we're in a good mood, other people can feel that.
yes,
When we're not in a good mood, people can feel that.
yes.
We can try to hide it. We can say, "Oh no, everything's fine,"
Mm,
but a lot of times people can say, "You call that fine?"
yeah,
It doesn't seem very fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you lead me beautifully on to my next question, because what I teach is bedtime meditation stories. And for some parents, they can pick up the book and they can immediately see differences in their children's sleep patterns from the first time they read the book. And what I try to do is actually help them connect to their hearts, the parents first, and think about the love they have for their child. So in order for the sleep method in my book to work, is all the parent has to do is tune into the love they have for their children. And for some parents, it's easier than for others. They have a harder time letting go of the stress of work or whatever they have to do after the kids are have fallen asleep, or just life stressing them out. And so what I feel, and now maybe you can explain then how it actually works. So
Mm,
what I've been teaching parents is that when I do this in a good way, and when I'm with my children in the loving, caring, calm, peaceful way at bedtime, it feels like I open up a space in front of my heart, like a space of energy. And it feels like the kid can crawl into that energy space. And it almost feels like they crawl back into my tummy. And then I meet them heart to heart. And
mm,
when we have that connection, then it takes minutes before they calm down and they can actually fall asleep while we fill up our hearts with love. So
mm,
it feels so like it reminds me of the first weeks after they were born, so I get to reconnect with them in that strong way than
mm.
these
Wow.
newborn babies every night for 10 minutes. And I'm so grateful for it. But what happens when we are coherent? What happens when we connect to our hearts as parents? And how can we explain this space of energy that I feel they crawl into?
Hmm. So it's such a lovely image of crawling into that space that you're creating. Well, without being too overly technical, I think this one way to think of it is that because the heart is electrical,
Yeah.
it has an electric, it produces an electrical signal every time our heart beats. That's called the electrocardiogram. That's how it's measured, the electricity of the heart. And this is happening, that's the first sign of life. Actually, there's no brain in the fetus. And how we know there's life in there is the heart starts beating. And
I
there's
love
no
that.
there's no brain even that's become itself yet. That happens a few weeks later. And it won't happen unless there's been a heartbeat to kind of be the on switch that starts to tell different cells turn into a brain. You guys over there turn into a liver. You guys over there bones. Whatever is required, whatever they're supposed to be, whatever they're designed to be. So, but anyway, the point is that we are electrical. That's a part of what is human. Just like we are also chemical, but we are electrical. And anything electrical creates a field around itself.
Mhm.
And we know that because if you're driving under big electrical transformers on the highway and you have the radio on your car, a lot of times, I'm not sure if it's still true. Maybe it's not anymore in Denmark, but you would hear static on the radio because the interference, that was a field that was being created around those very powerful electrical generators, and that field was interfering with the signal on your radio, so
Mhm.
you'd hear the noise. So this is an example of a field.
Mhm.
The point is every human being creates a field,
Mhm.
and that field is produced by the electrical signal of the heart. That field, depending upon whether we're in a coherent state or not, can extend several feet away from the body. And even right now, you could go into a hospital and they could measure your heartbeat several feet away from your body.
Wow.
It's not just inside your skin. And this is not an aura. This is not something that sounds all strange. This is the actual electrical signal. So all living things produce electrical signal, and therefore that signal is creating a field. It's like this energy that sort of surrounds the actual signal. When we're in a coherent state, that field is beautiful,
Mm.
and it's it's kind of the shape of an apple. It's kind of like unfolding like that in these waves that are coming out when we're coherent. When we're not so coherent, you can imagine it's more like machine guns coming out, shooting. It's not a coherent, beautiful space. What you're describing, I can only imagine what it would be like to be a small child when you do this, but it sounds wonderful. But what you're describing is you're probably starting from a very coherent state because you're feeling love for your children, whoever the child is that you're with, and so that sense of love is ensuring that the field itself is smooth and beautiful and flowing kind of thing. I'm using my arms to, if hopefully your people are watching this as opposed to just listening. Um, but if we're not in a coherent state, it wouldn't have that same effect. And the not coherent state means we're distracted, means we're trying to be with our children, but we're still upset about what the boss said to us earlier in the day, or what that parent said to me yesterday, or the thing I'm worried about that has to happen tomorrow, or are we going to be able to afford the mortgage payment this month? Whatever the worry may be, that distraction is affecting that same field.
Mhm.
And the child doesn't know what's going on. The child just doesn't feel mom or dad very warm and friendly. So why would the child want to crawl into the space of that
No,
person?
and even what I sense is that when mom and dad have these stressful energies and they come into the bedroom and say, I've told you 10 times you have to go to bed, you have to get up early in the morning, I have so much to do tonight and you're not sleeping, it's been 2 hours, and la, 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 and they just go, like you say, firing at the child. What happens is that the child becomes more alert. Is this a threat? What's going on in my parents' energy? They are like, everything inside the body is just going crazy.
Yeah.
And I know you when we were in France, you said if you remember one figure out of everything I say today, remember 1400. So tell me about 1400. What is actually going on in the body of the child and the parent when we get a little stressed out here?